For centuries, Hades has been painted as a villain, the horned tyrant of hell, cloaked in flames. To the modern mind, the name summons images of fire and brimstone, horns and fangs, a dark throne made of bones, and the eternal torment of sinners, writhing in endless punishment. He is painted as the devil of the ancient world, but this is not the Hades the Greeks knew. In actual Greek mythology, Hades was never the torturer of souls. He never burned sinners in eternal flame or flayed mortals. For their sins, those roles belonged to others, to the Furies, who pursued oath-breakers and kinslayers, and to the judges of the dead, who weighed a soul's life and determined its fate. Hades's task was not cruelty, but order. He ruled the underworld with structure, silence, and an almost bureaucratic precision. Unlike Zeus, he did not seek worship or demand temples. Unlike Poseidon, he did not rise in storms to punish mortals. Unlike Ares, he did not revel in blood. Hades was necessary. He was feared, because death itself is feared, but he was not hated. The Greeks understood him not as a devil, but as a ruler of inevitability. The birth of Hades, son of Cronus and Rhea. Long before the Olympians ruled from their shining palace in the clouds, the world was in the hands of the Titans, immense and primeval forces of nature. Among them reigned Cronus, the Titan of time, and his queen Rhea. From them came 6 children destined to shape the cosmos: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and finally Zeus. But Cronus was haunted by prophecy. He was told that one day one of his children would overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his own father, Uranus. Paranoid and consumed by fear, Cronus committed a terrible act. The moment each child was born, he swallowed them whole, trapping them in the dark abyss of his stomach. Thus, Hades came into existence not under sunlight or starlight, but in suffocating darkness. He never saw the world as an infant. He never breathed free air or touched the earth. His earliest reality was confinement, silence, and a kind of living death inside his father's body. He was entombed before he ever lived. It was only when the youngest child, Zeus, escaped this fate, hidden away by Rhea in secret, that the chain of fate began to turn. When Zeus reached manhood, he returned in defiance, forcing Cronus to disgorge his devoured siblings. From the Titan's stomach emerged gods fully grown, reborn into the world they had been denied. For Hades, that moment of liberation was transformative. He knew what it meant to be swallowed, buried, and forgotten, only to rise again. The myths do not linger on what that meant for him, but the implication is clear. Hades understood confinement, silence, and inevitability in ways the other gods never did. These qualities would shape his entire reign as Lord of the Underworld. The Titanomachy, War of the Gods. Once freed, the 6 siblings faced a choice: remain in fear of their father or rise against him. They chose the latter, and thus began the Titanomachy, the 10-year war between the Titans and the Olympians. The earth split, the skies shook, and the seas boiled. It was not simply a battle, but a cosmic upheaval, a war that determined the order of the universe. Hades was no passive figure in this conflict. During the war, the Cyclopes, ancient smiths imprisoned by Cronus, were freed by Zeus. In gratitude, they forged 3 weapons of unimaginable power: the thunderbolt for Zeus, the trident for Poseidon, and the helm of darkness for Hades. This helm granted invisibility not only to mortals, but to gods themselves. While Zeus rained thunder from the heavens and Poseidon shattered mountains with tidal waves, Hades fought a different kind of war. He became the shadow in the battlefield, the unseen force that infiltrated camps, spread terror among the Titans, and launched ambushes that came from nowhere. His weapon was not brute force, but stealth and strategy. The myths are vague about the exact moment Cronus fell, but they agree on this. Without Hades's helm and cunning, the war might have lasted longer or ended differently. Invisibility allowed him to strike where others could not, and his silent presence on the battlefield broke the enemy's will. When the war ended and the Titans were cast down into Tartarus, it was in part because Hades had moved like a phantom among them, dismantling their defenses from within. Division of the realms, Hades, god of the underworld. When the Titans were defeated, the three brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, drew lots to divide the cosmos. Fate, not preference, assigned their thrones. Zeus took the vast heavens, Poseidon claimed the endless seas, and Hades descended to rule the realm beneath the earth, the underworld. This division was not meant as punishment or reward. It was balance. The universe needed rulers for sky, sea, and death, and Hades accepted his lot without protest. Where others saw darkness, he saw necessity. While Zeus basked in lightning and Poseidon roared in waves, Hades sat upon a throne, in silence, shaping a world few others would dare to rule. The underworld itself was not one place, but many. Elysium, the fields of eternal joy for heroes and the righteous. Asphodel meadows, the resting ground for ordinary souls. Tartarus, a pit of torment for the wicked and for the Titans themselves. The rivers of the dead, Styx, Lethe, Cocytus, Phlegethon, and Acheron, each a boundary between states of existence. Hades did not determine who went where. The judges of the dead decided a soul's fate. Hades merely ensured order was maintained and that no soul escaped. His role was guardian, ruler, and custodian, not torturer. Family of the dead, Hades and his court. Though he often stood apart from Olympus, Hades was not alone in his domain. Around him gathered figures who, like him, marked transitions between life and death, dream and waking, crime and punishment. Charon, the ferryman, carried souls across the river Styx, Thanatos, the personification of death, and his brother Hypnos, god of sleep, drifted through his halls. The Furies punished oathbreakers and crimes against kin. Hecate, goddess of magic and crossroads, carried her torches freely in his realm. And at the gate stood Cerberus, the three-headed hound, untamed by all except Hades himself. These were not companions of revelry or feasting like the gods of Olympus. They were guardians of thresholds, keepers of boundaries. Hades surrounded himself not with flatterers, but with those who, like him, bore the weight of inevitability. Hades and Persephone, the queen of the underworld. No story defines Hades more than his union with Persephone, daughter of Demeter, goddess of the harvest. Persephone was radiant, cherished by her mother and kept close, shielded from the turmoil of Olympus. But Hades desired her, not as a passing conquest, but as a queen to rule beside him. He did not seek Demeter's consent. Instead, he went to Zeus, Persephone's father, and gained his secret approval. One day, while Persephone gathered flowers in a meadow, the earth split open. From the chasm rose Hades in his black chariot, drawn by immortal horses. He seized her and vanished into the depths, the ground closing above them. The abduction sent shockwaves through gods and mortals alike. Demeter searched tirelessly for her daughter, and in her grief withheld the fertility of the earth. Crops failed, famine spread, and humanity withered. At last, the truth came out. Persephone was in the underworld, seated beside Hades on a throne as queen, but a law bound her there. Persephone had eaten 6 seeds of a pomegranate while in Hades' realm, and by divine law, anyone who consumed the food of the dead was forever tied to it. Zeus, pressured by Demeter's fury, brokered a compromise. Persephone would spend part of the year with her mother, bringing spring and summer, and part of the year with Hades, bringing autumn and winter. Thus, through her descent and return, the Greeks explained the cycle of the seasons. But the myth reveals more. Persephone was not a silent captive. Over time, she grew into her crown, becoming a powerful queen who ruled beside Hades as his equal, judging souls and commanding respect. And unlike Zeus or Poseidon, Hades was faithful. Persephone was his one true consort, and his loyalty to her set him apart from almost every other Olympian. Orpheus and Eurydice in the underworld. Few mortals ever dared to descend into Hades' realm alive. Fewer still returned, but one story remains immortal: the tragedy of Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus was no warrior or king. He was a poet and musician. His lyre could calm beasts, sway trees, and soften stone itself. He loved Eurydice, and she loved him. Yet on their wedding day, fate intervened. A serpent's bite claimed her life, dragging her soul into the underworld. Most mortals would have despaired, but Orpheus did what no one else dared. He followed her into the land of the dead, alive and unarmed, carrying only his music. He crossed the rivers of Hades, lulled Cerberus into stillness, and moved the Furies to tears. Even the stern king and queen of the underworld were moved by his grief. Hades, who rarely yielded, did something unthinkable. He offered a second chance. Eurydice could return, but on one condition: Orpheus must walk ahead of her, and he must not look back until both reached the light of the living. Step by step, Orpheus climbed. Behind him was silence, no voice, no breath, no footsteps. Doubt gnawed at him, and just before they reached the surface, he turned. In an instant, Eurydice vanished. Hades had kept his word. Orpheus had not. What matters here is not only the tragedy of love, but the character of Hades. He did not trick Orpheus. He did not punish him beyond the agreed terms. He gave him a chance, something no god had done before. And when Orpheus failed, Hades allowed the silence to return. For in his realm, oaths mattered and endings were final. Hades and Sisyphus. If Orpheus represents the mortal who loved too deeply, Sisyphus represents the mortal who cheated too arrogantly. King of Corinth, Sisyphus was cunning beyond measure. He lied, he betrayed, and worst of all, he tricked Thanatos, death itself. When Thanatos came to chain his soul, Sisyphus ensnared him instead. With death imprisoned, no one could die. Battles raged without casualties, the old withered without release, and Hades' realm grew eerily silent. This imbalance enraged Hades, for his domain depended on the flow of souls. Eventually, Ares freed Thanatos, restoring death to the world, and Sisyphus was dragged to the underworld in chains. But the trickster had prepared yet another ruse. He instructed his wife not to perform burial rites. When he stood before Hades and Persephone, he claimed injustice: unburied, unprepared, wrongly sent. The rulers of the dead allowed him to return, to set things right. But once alive again, he refused to return. He laughed at gods and fate alike, yet no trick lasts forever. When Hades finally reclaimed him, punishment followed. Not fire, not lashes, but futility. Sisyphus was condemned to roll a boulder uphill, only for it to tumble back down for eternity. A punishment of repetition, not cruelty. For Hades did not need flames to enforce justice. Inevitability itself was enough. Heracles and the capture of Cerberus. Among the many labors of Heracles, none was more impossible than the 12th. To capture Cerberus, guardian of the underworld. Armed with nothing but his courage, Heracles descended alive into Hades' domain. He faced shadows, shades, and horrors. Yet when he reached the throne of Hades and Persephone, he did not demand or steal. He asked. Hades could have refused, struck him down, or unleashed fury. Instead, he offered a test. Heracles could take. Cerberus, if he could subdue the beast without weapons, strength alone would decide. Heracles wrestled the monstrous hound, enduring its 3 snapping jaws and serpent tail, until finally he pinned it. He brought Cerberus to the surface, terrifying King Eurydice, who begged for its return. True to his word, Heracles returned the guardian, and Hades accepted without spite. This myth shows a side of Hades overlooked in modern retellings. He was not a tyrant, not quick to rage. He honored strength, fairness, and oaths. Even when challenged by mortals, he upheld his word. Hades and his lovers, Minthe and Leuce. Though Hades was known for his loyalty to Persephone, myths whisper of 2 women who left faint traces on his story. Minthe, a nymph of the river Cocytus, was said to have been a lover before Persephone. After Hades' marriage, Minthe boasted she would replace the queen. Persephone crushed her arrogance, transforming her into the mint plant. From bitterness came fragrance, and in funerary rites, mint became a herb of remembrance. Leuce, another nymph, died and entered the underworld. Hades, struck by her grace, transformed her into the first white poplar tree in the Elysian fields. Its leaves shimmered silver, light on one side, shadow on the other, a symbol of the balance between life and death. These stories are small compared to the myths of Zeus or Apollo, but they reveal Hades' difference. He did not scatter illegitimate children across the world. He loved rarely, and when he did, memory, not conquest, remained. Theseus and Pirithous, trapped in the underworld. Not every mortal who descended was granted mercy. Theseus and Pirithous, emboldened by arrogance, attempted the unthinkable. They sought to kidnap Persephone herself. They entered Hades' hall, boasting of their plan. But Hades, instead of striking them down, welcomed them. He offered seats at his table. The moment they sat, they were bound to the chairs of forgetfulness, their bodies rooted, their wills dulled. Years passed, their punishment not fire or torture, but stagnation. Only Theseus was later freed, dragged away by Heracles. Pirithous remained, trapped forever in the silence he had mocked. Hades had no need to kill them. He simply let their arrogance collapse into eternity. Misconceptions: Hades versus Satan. Modern culture often mistakes Hades for Satan. Films, games, and comics show him with horns, flames, and a villain's smirk. But this is a distortion. In Greek mythology, Hades is not the punisher of the wicked. He is not the ruler of hell. He does not tempt, deceive, or torment. The Greeks distinguished carefully. Thanatos was death. The Furies were vengeance. The judges of the dead determined punishment. Tartarus was the pit of torment. Hades was ruler, custodian, keeper of order. His role was necessary, not evil. He did not seek followers or revel in cruelty. He ruled in silence, and even the gods spoke his name only in whispers, out of fear, not of malice, but of inevitability. Legacy of Hades. Unlike Zeus or Apollo, Hades had no grand temples. Worship was rare and discreet, performed through funerary rites, grave offerings, and whispered prayers. To call upon him directly was considered dangerous. Instead, the Greeks honored him through ritual, asking not for favor, but for peace. Hades was not loved, nor was he despised. He was respected because he represented the final truth no god or mortal could escape. The cycle of life ended with him, and through Persephone, it began again each spring. His silence set him apart from the noisy quarrels of Olympus. Where other gods indulged in pride, lust, and chaos, Hades remained steady. He ruled without ego, without cruelty, and without complaint. And that is his paradox: feared yet just, silent yet absolute, necessary but never adored. The Greeks did not see him as the devil. They saw him as the one who waited, patient and inevitable, at the end of all journeys, not loved, not hated, simply eternal. Hades was never the villain. He was balance, inevitability, and order. While his brothers thundered across the skies and seas, he ruled in silence, reminding gods and mortals alike that every story, no matter how glorious, ends in his realm. If you've enjoyed this journey into the shadowed halls of the underworld, don't let it end here. Subscribe for more tales of myth and legend. Give this video a like to help it reach fellow seekers of ancient stories, and share it with anyone who still mistakes Hades for a devil in flames.